God eftermiddag mina damer och herrar. Välkomna tillbaka till The Conference här på sydsvenskan.se. Vi gör några intervjuer med några av de särskilt bemärkta talare som besöker Malmö igår och idag. Nu har jag med mig Brian Reed som är från This American Life, ett alldeles speciellt amerikanskt medieprojekt. Vi ska prata med honom en liten stund om varför radiomediet står sig så otroligt starkt i en väldigt visuell tid. Welcome everybody. Of course we'll do this in English in honor of our guest Brian Reed, who's worth a hand right away, I think. Welcome, Brian. This little chat is aimed mostly for the people who may have missed your presentation that you gave. Can you give us, I realize that's impossible, but can you give us the really tight version of what you were talking about today?
Sure. I talked about the elements that we use at our show to build stories. So action, reflection, and stakes in particular. Just kind of old storytelling building blocks, and just kind of played some examples.
But then This American Life, your project, is probably not known to a lot of people. So let's talk about that too.
Given the name.
Yeah, makes sense. So tell us a little bit about what is this? Art, journalism, storytelling, literature? Where do you want to place yourself?
I think about it as journalism. I mean, we do fiction sometimes.
Excuse me, I'm just gonna.
All right.
There we go.
You got me there. All right. Journalism is what I would say. I mean, we air fiction sometimes. We air things that are not journalism per se, but the majority of what we do is we tell true stories, a whole variety of them, whether they're, a personal story that happened to you at work that's funny, that's small and 2 minutes long, or an hour-long investigation into why the global economy collapsed. So,
and the typical employee with This American Life is a storyteller, editor, reporter. How many people?
We're all producers for the most part.
And how many are you?
Exact number. I mean, we're about 15 people, maybe going on 20. So majority of us are producers. We have our host and executive producer, Ira Glass, a senior producer, Julie Snyder, a staff of producers, and then like a production manager, operations director, office manager.
And what's your business model?
Our business model, we're public radio. So we are listener supported. We air on public radio stations around the country. We do have underwriting. It's not quite advertising, but it's sponsorship. But the majority is listener donations. So
it's completely a donation-based. That's
for
what
the
you
most part,
depend on.
Yeah.
And your listeners, how many are they? Do you know?
I believe we have like 2 million or so on the radio, and then we also have a podcast, and we have about 1 million there, 1 million downloads each week on iTunes.
And that development with the analog and the digital, it's obviously going more digital, but you're sticking to the analog. How long are you going to do that?
That is way above my pay grade. I have no idea. I mean, I just make stories, and
let somebody
people
else
listen to the radio. I don't know. People drive. People listen to it. I don't know what's happening with radio. I have no idea. I listen mostly on the podcast, though I do listen on the radio once in a while. I don't know. That's a question for someone like beyond me.
Great. So here's a question for someone like you.
Sure.
I think we live in an extremely visual age. People talk about Instagram, YouTube. People don't want to read instructions. They want to see tutorials. Yet radio seems to hold its crowd.
Yeah.
What is it about radio that makes it stick?
What is it about radio? It's. I mean, there's a couple ways to answer the question. There's like the more technical way, but I think like emotionally, it's intimate. It's a way of like you just feeling like someone's sitting there telling you a story at a bar, and you get to hear interesting people from all over the world who've lived through interesting things tell you stories like in your earbuds, or in your car or while you're cooking dinner, and also practically like you can do other tasks while you listen to it, unlike TV or visual stuff. Like you can drive and listen to a complex radio story without crashing your car, which I think is a useful niche market. So I don't know. I think it has lasting value for a bunch of reasons. It's also a lot more affordable to make than TV, for instance. It's a lot leaner. And I don't know, it just taps into like a very old impulse in us, a very old form, just like telling stories,
Were you always a radio guy?
No. I never listened to the radio until I started working on radio.
Well, how did
I don't
that
know, I
happen?
just grew our public radio is called NPR, and I don't think I ever knew what it was till college. My parents didn't listen to it. I feel like some people grow up listening to public radio, at least in the States, and they can be kind of like cultish about it. That was not my experience at all.
What's the
so I learned
status
about it
of
late in
the
life.
NPR in the States now? I mean, public service is always a big debate in Europe. How are they holding on?
NPR? I don't know a ton about this, honestly, but I think they're doing okay. It's a separate organization from where I work. So, again, it's mostly listener donations. It's not tax-based for the most part. So when you hear those debates about, like, you may hear debates like where, congressmen are saying, we're going to pull NPR's funding, it wouldn't really matter that much.
Really? That's how little they make?
For the most part. There are certain rural stations and parts of the system where it would matter, but the majority of funding is not tax money, it's listener money.
Right.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the impact that you've had, because you've had some pretty amazing stories that really made a difference for people. Topic of your choice. Tell us something about one of your greatest achievements.
My greatest achievements
in this American life. It's just no personal
honestly,
questions.
the greatest achievements is just telling a good story. I have very little faith. Maybe this is cynical, but I have very little faith that journalism can actually change things like this that the story is about. I think very rarely does it actually change. If you think about all the stories that are created every day that journalists create, how many of those are actually causing a direct change to fix the problem that they're about? They're helping us understand what it is, and so I think the best you can hope for is something engaging, making something that you're proud of and that you would want to listen to.
You're not in it for the politics.
No, I mean, it's nice if you, so I played a clip from a story I worked on about Guatemala.
That's the one I was hoping you would.
Yeah, and so there was one outcome of that. It was about a guy named Oscar who's Guatemalan. He moved to the U.S. and learned many years after he moved that actually, the guy who he thought was his father was not his father, but had actually taken part in a massacre in his town and stolen him when he was 3 years old. And anyway, I'm proud of that story. It's a really heartbreaking and emotional story. That's what I'm most proud of. But also, Oscar was applying for asylum in the United States at the time when we aired the story, and I don't know if this is a direct impact, but his lawyer said the story really helped him get asylum. He got asylum shortly after the story, so that was pretty cool. And he was very happy. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to take credit totally for that. He's got a really good case. He had good lawyers, and he was a really amazing guy. And he had a lot of reasons why he didn't want to go back to Guatemala. Why it would be dangerous for him to do that.
And let's circle around the impact and the reactions you get. I know you have a pretty strong ongoing dialogue with your audience. What's the typical response you get? Are people angry with you? Are they excited about what you do? Or do they want to discuss this with you?
Like in our listener emails, for instance? I think people like what we do. I mean, we fund ourselves based on people donating to us if they want to. They don't need to give us any money. They can just listen to the podcast for free forever. And we just say, if you like this, please text us, and it'll send us $10. And we're doing well. So,
how many
that's
people do that?
validating. I don't know the numbers on that. But a lot of emails we do get that always perplex me is we get a lot of emails about people whenever we air a story. So we'll air a story that's about a horrible human rights event where lots of humans have died, and people will write us and they'll be upset. But if we air any story, even if it's a piece of fiction where an animal is spoken badly of, we will get a flood of emails saying how horrible we are for air. You need to warn people if you're going to talk badly about an animal or if something bad might happen to an animal in a story. It's you're not emailing us about the humans getting killed in these stories. You're emailing about these animals. That's a very common email we get that always sticks in my mind and perplexes me.
That's
somewhat
weird? Depressing, yeah.
It's weird, right?
Yeah. People engaged in unexpected things sometimes. That's always
people and their animals, Yeah.
It's true. So I would like to ask you to broaden the perspective a little as well. I realize it's a big question, but what's the state of the union for journalism in the world? I mean, a lot of us who are journalists are pretty depressed because it's hard to make ends meet. It's hard to make room for the stories that we want to make room for. What's your take on that?
I don't know. I don't feel like a speaker for the world of journalism, but
you can be.
I don't know. I like a very specific type of story, and and that's what I like. I like the kind of things that we make. I like things that kind of are in that realm. I like longer form stories. I like things with characters. I like things with plots. I like TV shows, like Breaking Bad and The Wire and Mad Men, and I like stories that feel like that, even if they're about an important topic. That's the stuff I like. And I do see like a lot more of that being made slowly, and that excites me, I know that like a lot of journalism is in disarray and it's going through this retrenchment, and newspapers are losing funding, and a lot of journalists are having trouble finding work, and I mean I think that's really tough, and I feel very lucky to like be in a place that's doing well, and I don't know, I hope that people can. I think like the way to get out of it hopefully is just make good work, make work that's different from everybody else's, so that you're the only one making work quite like that, and hopefully people will come to it. If you build it, they will come, kind of thing.
So we've seen for a while that some of the best literature is the literature that takes the pace and the heart from journalism, and some of the best journalism is the journalism that uses the imagination and the vividness of literature, or the other way around. So they borrow from each other.
I think that's exactly right.
So are we paying something for that, though? I mean, do we lose in credibility, for example, if we borrow too much from the fiction toolbox?
No, I don't think so. As long as you're being true, I don't think you lose anything. I mean, I think those are important tools. They're just storytelling tools,
It's so easy to manipulate, though.
It's not that easy. First of all, it's hard to create stories. And I don't think all important stories can be told a certain, in a way that uses those tools, but I think that those tools don't take credibility away. In fact, I think they can often help people engage with and understand a topic that they would otherwise just ignore. And I think that that's better than people ignoring stuff.
So I have a final question, but I just want to open the floor in case anybody cares to ask Brian a question. We can take a minute to do that. We have a microphone and we have a runner. Anyone? Don't be shy. Here's the lady in the front. Let me just make sure that the microphone is on. Who are you?
Okay, my name is Sophia Bennett, and I work for government for regional development.
Hi.
So we do a lot of storytelling, actually, all the time. But I was wondering, because you're not that you're a non-journalist, but what kind of background do you have? Are you a journalist, or?
I consider myself a journalist, but I didn't study journalism. I studied theater in college, and and history as well. So I use that stuff every day in my job. I mean, we write scripts, and I think we think in terms of story and character, but then I also use that history background as well in terms of research and adhering to the truth and context and historical context and things like that. But I work with amazing journalists. Like we consider ourselves journalists.
I'm not a trained journalist myself either. I'm a literature major, so can work anyway.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's see. Any more questions? Yes, from a gentleman here on the floor, who we also met yesterday. Please introduce yourself again.
Hi, my name is Hasib.
Hi.
And I'm from Pakistan. I have a question. Maybe I'm working in the social innovation sector, and I'm working on a project which is helping people, an artist back in Pakistan. So a lot of people who are working for those people, for those marginalized communities, are sharing their stories, but they are sharing all the negative stories of people who are over there. Mm-hmm. So is it possible to be positive and at the same time share your initiative with the people so that they can understand that they should help people over there? Or it should be a negative one and you have to create a story which is negative, people really need help, and as you mentioned, there are three things, but what do you suggest? Should it be a positive story can have the same impact as of negative?
I think so. I think it's harder to do positive stories. I mean, when you talk about I agree with you. When you talk about the craft of storytelling, story by its definition almost is based on conflict, right? And so often positive stories, if something good is happening, there's not conflict there. There's no question of, there's nothing to drive the story. I mean, it'd be nice to find stories that have conflict and then have a happy ending. I think those can have change. I mean, it's just a matter of finding them. But I think the solution is to, if you are doing a story that is about something negative, to actually spend more time with it and give the people who are going through the experience and living it time more than just a soundbite to actually explain their life and how it's affecting their life and what they're experiencing. Let them talk for a while. That's, I think, the best solution. So that even if it's negative, you're getting a sense of what it's like to know this person who's experiencing it and knowing why it's horrible that something negative is happening to them. Does that make sense? Just like giving them literally more time on the air and treating them, like just giving them space to talk. Sorry. Okay.
So you are suggesting that rather than being negative or positive, share the experience and let the audience decide that what they think about it.
Yeah, and exactly. But to just let the person who it's happening to talk more than I think happens in a lot of daily news cycles, where it's just like, go here for the soundbite, and we have 3 minutes to tell this story. Just spend 20 minutes on the story, spend 30 minutes on the story, give the person time to kind of explain themselves, get to know the person a little bit in the story, rather than just this kind of pin-up speaking to some event that happened, and you don't get to know them as a person at all.
It's a classic question of resources and time.
Yes, it is.
So my final question, just because I'm curious, what are you working on right now? What's your next thing?
Oh man, I'm actually not allowed to talk about it.
Are you not allowed to talk about it? It's a very quiet setting. We're just broadcasting over the internet.
Just to the whole world.
I'm not going to tell anybody.
What I'm working on right now. I mean, I've got a couple. The thing I'm working on right in the midst of right now, I can't talk about. But I've got a couple other things in the hopper. I've been talking to a guy. It's hard to explain. Jeez, I've been talking to a guy down in Alabama, like in the rural deep south, who's lived there his whole life. He's in his 40s, takes care of his mom with Alzheimer's, and he just hates it down there. Like, he absolutely hates it there. This is going to sound like a horrible story. You need to just hear him as a talker. But
no, that sounds like a pretty good story.
He hates it there so much, and he's just this fascinating mind who's constantly, like, putting together all these things that are happening. And anyway, he thinks there may be some weird, funny business going on. There may be an unsolved murder. There may be, like, some weird stuff happening.
Well, to find out what the story is about, it's thisamericanlife.org if you're interested. This, everybody, is Brian Reed. A warm hand.
Thanks.
Och tack alla ni som har lyssnat på Sydsvenskan.se också. Vi är tillbaka 15:35 med en spännande gäst från Kickstarter, så hoppas vi ses då. Ha det bra. Hej!